My name is Barbara Heskins Davis from the Land Conservancy of New Jersey, and I'm really delighted to be doing this workshop with Kevin O'Leary, who's the Deputy Mayor of Lafayette Township in Sussex County. Lafayette's one of my favorite towns. If you haven't had a chance to explore the municipality, you should go. You should hike, shop, and enjoy their beautiful open spaces. So Kevin and I are here today to talk about open space planning. How do you do it? What is it? How do you get the money? And what the benefits are to the municipality for doing an open space plan and doing an open space program. I'm going to start. I'll speak for about 20 minutes about the nuts and bolts of an open space plan and what the benefits of doing it are. And then Kevin's going to dig right into the municipality's program, what it did for them, how it started, and kind of where they hope to be going with it. As Nikki said, don't hesitate to introduce yourself in the chat. It's really helpful for us to know where you're from so that we can kind of tailor what it is we have to say. I'm a licensed planner, and I've been at the Land Conservancy, I think almost 23 years, my favorite job ever. So I'm happy to be here and happy to share what we do. Great. So again, my name is Barbara. I'm from the Land Conservancy, and I'm here to talk about open space planning. So why do an open space plan? I'm all about the money. The money is there to help you protect land within your municipality. And where is the major source of funding? It's through the state's Green Acres program. It's run through the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection. And they have two different programs. They have a site-specific program, and they have the Planning Incentive Grant program. The site-specific program is if you're interested and have identified one property. Let's say you want to buy mine, Mrs. Davis's property, and you negotiate with me and I agree to sell you my property, and you apply to Green Acres, and you would get a 25% grant if you don't have an open space trust and you don't have an open space plan, and that would be earmarked for my property. But if I changed my mind and I no longer wanted to sell it to the municipality, you would no longer have the money that was associated with that property, and you'd have to reapply if another property came in. And those applications are extensive. The Planning Incentive Program is a flexible-based program so that if you have an open space and recreation plan, you would submit the plan to Green Acres as your application, and you could potentially qualify for any one of the properties that are identified in your plan. And as long as your municipality is collecting at a minimum 1/2 cent per $100 of assessed property value, the state would award a 50% grant. And if that property owner changed their mind, you could easily transfer that money to another property that's identified in your open space plan. So it's a great way to leverage local dollars. Kevin's going to be speaking to you about the open space plan that we've done for Lafayette Township. We did their original plan back in 2004, and we updated it in 2020. Green Acres requires that the plans be consistent with the municipal land use law and that they be updated every 10 years. We always start our plans with an executive summary. It's like a one-pager, where is the town? What's the open space program? What does the plan recommend? It's kind of your cheat sheet for the municipality. We did Sussex County's open space and recreation plan update. And when we did the county plan, we created kind of these one-page fact sheets about each one of the municipalities. Again, the concept is, what are the population trends in Sussex and in Warren County? Population had been decreasing. It'll be interesting to see how the pandemic affects those demographic changes. How much preserved land? Do they have an open space trust fund? What are the local goals? How is land being used? And where is it located? So these were really helpful when we did the county plan. Always look at the goals of your open space program. Why do you want to protect land within the municipality? In some of the towns, they want to protect the quality of life. So then you have to dig a little bit deeper. How do you define that quality of life? Right now, we're working with Knowlton Township, and Mayor Starr from Knowlton is speaking at another workshop right now. And their goal is to protect the rural character of their municipality. They want their farms, they want the farming community to stay, they want that farming economy to stay. And if that changed in that municipality, that would alter their quality of life and why people live there. In Teaneck Township, the goals of the open space program were really to provide a robust recreational facilities for the municipality. And these photographs, the upper one is of a municipal park, and the lower one is the county golf course, which is partially located in Teaneck Township. Both beautiful spots right outside of the city. When we did Livingston Township's open space plan update, they also identified a series of goals, and this suburban community really wanted to create an interconnected system of open space. They wanted to use their sidewalks to connect to their parks. They wanted to be able to protect kind of those last great spaces of undeveloped land within the municipality. Very involved in the Sustainable Jersey program, and they wanted to promote kind of that walking atmosphere within the municipality. Green Acres likes to see public outreach and communication, so they require 2 public meetings as part of an open space plan. We've done these all different ways. We've had bus tours of the town where the town has put together a school bus or gotten their senior bus, and we've advertised it, and people come and we drive around the town and talk about the parks and what's important to them and why they live in the municipality. We've had workshops where we invite landowners. We did this in Wantage Township, and we had the state and the county come so that landowners could talk to the resource people there and find out more about how to preserve their land. A lot of times we have it either with the governing body or the planning board. A great way to introduce the plan and get some feedback as to how the plan is being developed. I like to include a history of the open space program. What is a municipal open space trust fund? How has it been spent? What money has come into it? Very interesting. All the towns are different as to how they track their expenditures and how they track their income. You have interest income, you have grants that come in. 1 or 2 towns actually had bequests to the Open Space Trust Fund. And then how is the money spent? We finished Montville Township's Open Space Plan update. They're in Morris County, and they really accomplished their open space program through financing. So we talked about that and the bond financing and how long those bonds have to be paid back. We like to give an inventory of preserved and public lands in the town. How much is preserved? Who preserved it? Is it owned by the state? Is it owned by the county? What are those private recreational facilities, campgrounds, golf courses, tennis courts, things that people use for recreation or outdoor kind of living space? And what's their potential for open space? Edison Township, I'm excited to say, we did their open space plan update back in 2018. This is part of their 2017 public meeting. The meeting was standing room only. We had over 100 people at their workshop to talk about the priorities for open space. It's in Middlesex County. It's the 5th most populous municipality in the state. Their open space trust fund actually expired in 2016. They had a ballot question in 2018 after we finished the plan to reestablish the open space trust fund, and it failed by 400 points, 400 votes. They had a ballot question on this month, and we're very excited to say that it passed. Not only did it pass by over 3,000 votes. So they're going to reestablish the trust fund at 2 cents per $100 of assessed value. Edison Township is facing some really significant threats, as are other from warehouse development and multi-unit developments. They see open space as a way to balance out those more intense uses of their landscape. Green Acres requires a base map. We use GIS, which is a digital mapping software. We find that it's fairly ubiquitous. All the municipalities do use it and will provide the data to them. This is for Madison Borough. And we use the tax assessor database to identify the different land uses. I don't use zoning because zoning can change, and the tax assessor database gives you a really good idea of kind of a picture in time as to how the land is used. So you'll see the educational facilities are in that pink color. So Madison is home to Drew University and Fairleigh Dickinson. The purple properties are the publicly owned properties such as the sewage authority, the municipal building, ambulance, the library. Orange are commercial. And in Madison, what's very interesting is they have Giralda Farms, which is an office park, and Giralda Farms has a walking path around it. So even though it is a business center, it's a heavily used recreational site because it connects to Lewanika Brook Reservation, which is a county park facility. And a lot of people use Giralda Farms to walk around and get some exercise throughout the day. We like to include a section on historic and cultural resources. This is Caldwell Borough in Essex County. They have a variety of historic sites within the municipality. For towns like Caldwell, and the next slide will be for Washington Township down in Gloucester County. The historic sites really form the anchor of the municipality. And even if the town doesn't use their open space trust to maintain or to preserve historic sites, the loss of these sites would irreparably harm kind of the character and beauty of the municipality. So we like to include them as anchors in any type of open space plan or greenway design. And again, as I mentioned, this is a photograph of the old stone house in Washington Township, which is listed on the National Register. And Washington Township is a large municipality, one of the largest in the state. I believe it's 60 square miles. And they have beautiful parks, public parks, and they do have these picture in times of the old farmhouses within the municipality. The state likes to see that the open space program within the municipality is consistent with other planning documentation. So a good example of this is if you're doing a farmland plan, the state is going to invest in preserving those farms. They want to make sure that the underlying zoning doesn't support infrastructure improvements. So if a farm has been identified and it's in a redevelopment zone, the state will come back and question, why are you identifying this property as important for farmland preservation if it's in an area that's been designated for more intense development use. We're also seeing that with the rise in the involvement of the Fair Share Housing Corporation, that many of the municipalities that we're working with have developed affordable housing plans. And we like to make sure that those sites that have been identified as future sites for affordable housing are identified on the mapping and excluded from the open space analysis. Public funds won't go to purchase property for open space that have been designated on an affordable housing plan as a site for affordable housing. There is a great tool that's available, and I'm sure they have a workshop during this conference called the Conservation Blueprint. Very easy to use. It was designed to be user-friendly, and it identifies currently preserved land and where it's located, how it's preserved. And then it goes through a series of green space priorities to identify those lands that are important for different types of reasons. So this slide here highlights community green space, which are lands to protect that are important for the health of people. And this is in Wantage Township. So the higher priority lands are those that are in proximity to water resources, in this particular case, floodplains. You can see that in Wantage Township, there's a lot of forest lands, which are important for community green space, and those are identified. Where I find the tool is really effective are in those more developed communities. We used it in Mount Olive Township almost as a checkpoint to see whether or not the town's open space program has been consistent with what Conservation Blueprint recommends, and it has. So it's a great verification of kind of where you're going, and it gives you ideas for where you might want to go in the future. So it's called an open space and recreation plan. And one of the questions I always get is, well, is it a recreation master plan? And it's not. A recreation master plan is typically done by an engineering firm where it talks in detail about field space and how they can be redesigned or used to maximize their potential for active recreation. They're good documents. I strongly recommend them for towns that are having a crunch with respect to recreation resources. The open space and recreation plan really targets outdoor recreation. So we'll go and we'll look at state and federal lands and county lands that were within the municipality and what recreational programs they offer. We do try to give a pretty detailed look into municipal recreation programs. How many people are using those programs? Is it diverse? Is there the opportunity to expand those recreational areas? How are the recreational programs run? Are they run through the municipal recreation department, or are they run through private recreation leagues? How are they funded? Do the private recreation leagues raise all the money in order to run the programs? Mount Olive Township in Morris County has a very interesting example of recreational funding support, and their recreation program is very much focused on being self-funded. There's no municipal budget in Mount Olive Township for recreational programs, and surprisingly, they do have a good way of collecting money to run their programs, and it's a very broad-based recreational program. Part of the recreational program are trails. We had our meeting with Knowlton last night on their open space program, and they'd like to see a lot of their public lands or state lands within the western Warren County area. And they'd like to see some of the rail trails surface changed so they can support multi-use, such as bicycling versus only walking or horseback riding. So the plan really should end or conclude with a series of recommendations, kind of a system of open space. What are the ways that you can interconnect or help the community balance open space versus development? Where are those greenways? A lot of times we look at blueways along river corridors. In Pequannock Township, the Pompton River is an important river corridor or blueway within the municipality. And in Pompton River, so kind of Lincoln Park, Pompton Lakes, Pequannock Township, the river overflows quite a bit. So we've been working with those towns to identify properties that are at the highest risk of flooding in order to alleviate that and create an open space where prior there was an area for flood damage. So it's a way to try to control those flood waters and store extra waters. Some municipalities are very interested in stewardship recommendations, and Green Acres does have a program now where you can apply for funding through their stewardship program. It provides a 50% matching grant. There is a minimum ask, so they want to make sure the projects are successful and ones that would work for the municipality. We did Sussex County's open space and recreation plan update and did a series of recommendations. And one of the recommendations we made was consistency between owners and different land use types. Sussex County is about a third permanently protected, and it's owned entirely by other people. Sussex County only has 1 acre of parkland. It's the square in Newton. The remainder of their parkland is primarily owned by the federal government, the state, and local municipalities who own lands for parks and recreation. Franklin Township in Warren County wanted to have, more of a tailored view about what the local benefits were for open space and recreation, and we provided that for them. And it's helpful in terms of being able to communicate that. Again, as we've talked about, we have different greenway designs. This is in West Orange Township, and here the interest was really on protecting those trees and the river corridors. I don't know how many of you saw in the news, but after Hurricane Ida, they had a very serious rock slide coming down from the Seton Hall area into Northfield Avenue, where an apartment complex was located, and the apartment complex actually has to be taken down. So there's some very real concerns about the removal of tree cover. Green Acres requires an action plan, kind of a short, mid, and long-term set of recommendations for a municipality. And we provide pretty detailed actions and goals for each one of the plans that we do. Always recommend that they be adopted as an element of the master plan and they submit it to the state. And then more specific recommendations tailored to that particular municipality. So with that, I'll make sure that I put my contact information into the chat. I'm happy to answer questions, but I would like to be able to turn the presentation over to Kevin so he can talk to you specifically about what Lafayette Township has been doing. So with that, I thank you very much.
Thank you, Barbara. I'm going to just get my presentation up here and make sure it works. There we go. Oh, good afternoon. Thank you again, Barbara. My name is Kevin O'Leary, and I am currently the Deputy Mayor of Lafayette Township. But I've had a unique experience in open space because when I first started getting involved in government, I started back in 2004 with open space. I then kind of a year later got into the land use element of it and have been a member of the Land Use Board since 2005, served as a 10-year chairman of the board. And also now I'm on the governing body, and I still are involved in all three of these committees. And I think it's unique because I think you have to have a balancing between these three entities to have a good open space initiative. My experience to date has shown that sometimes you'll get a governing body member that thinks we have enough open space or wants to shut the open space program down and not, pursue open space trust funding. So I've seen it all, but Lafayette has in fact prevailed since 2004 in preserving not only just local acquisitions, but farmland preserved properties, as well as some direct acquisitions from the state, with Green Acres being involved. So again, my experience, I think to date has shown me a few things. I mean, the public opinion is very important. Again, sometimes people think that enough land in town is preserved. And I think you just had an example given to you by Barbara about Edison, who had a sunset provision and I guess stopped collecting a tax and then decided they wanted to do it again because guess what? Things change. And I found that over the, 15 to 20 years that we've been involved in this. I also see sometimes you get a misconception that open space preservation is just about active rec opportunities, when in fact passive, especially up by us in an environmentally sensitive area of the state, it's just as crucial for wildlife and plant species and the protection of environmentally sensitive areas. I mean, we're talking here about rivers conferences, and we have water bodies in our town that we've actually done some preservation, to keep them, to keep our program going and also protect these water sources. Another thing I see a lot of is the discussion about loss of tax rateables. And I think our town is somewhat unique because we have so many farmland assessed acres in the town. And when you actually go to make a decision on whether you want to proceed with a preservation project, those are sometimes easier. They're undeveloped tracts. They could be developed. But right now they're only collecting hundreds of dollars worth of taxes per year, as opposed to a tract that may have thousands of dollars. We actually had a project in town where we have a initiative basically to protect our ridge lines, which is very important to the township, as identified during one of our meetings that we had when we were doing our plan. And there was a concept before the land use board to actually develop that into about 15 or 20 homes. And we ended up preserving that tract. And it became very important because you can, the view sheds in our township are very important to us. We have 4 of them. We even had an initiative in the land use board coming originally out of the open space meetings that basically made a decision that we were going to go ahead. My presentation isn't up. Okay, I'll check that in a minute. But can anybody hear me? Hopefully you can hear me. But we have a overlay zone to protect our ridge lines. And again, we did have one of our projects that was supported by that. And the town made a decision that they weren't going to be as interested in the radiables that might actually come in annually from developing that tract to 15 to 20 homes, and we've now preserved that, and I'll show you that in a second. Another thing I see sometimes the questions is maintenance. How do you got all these open space acres preserved? How do you maintain them? Sometimes you can just let them stay in their natural state, but you have decisions to be made about mowing, upkeeping if they're athletic fields that impact your DPW and things of that nature. So again, that is probably an important element to think about. So overall, I think it's a balance between development and preservation. And Lafayette, as I said, with all the different ways we've gone about it, I think we've done a fairly good job in the 15 or so years we've been doing it to preserve properties. Let's see. Again, perseverance is another element to it because it's a lot of work. You have to establish the open space plan that Barb was talking about. It's worthy of doing it because you're going to maximize your ability to get planning incentive grant funding, which we've done, and it makes it easier when you're applying for grants for particular projects. And again, as I said, the Land Conservancy has been involved with us since 2005, helped us on 2 plans, and have been a great partner moving the process along. And now we're actually into a trail grant application that they're helping with, and I had worked a little bit on earlier. I just want to make sure, can everyone see this or they can't see this? Let me see if I can make sure this gets up. Hold on a minute.
Kevin, would you like me to share my screen and put up your oh, there we go.
There we go. Okay. Okay. Again, here's I want to just to get to know Lafayette Township, so you have an idea as to why our concerns would be something that might be different from Wantage or from Edison. I mean, obviously, there's 2 completely different situations going on as far as we're very, very environmentally sensitive with our properties. We have major trails through it, and we have a lot of wildlife preserves as well. But Lafayette's small. We're only 18 square miles, and we're centrally located in Sussex County. So that is, could easily be sensitive to major development because of where we are actually located. We have a rich history in agricultural in the heart of Kittatinny Valley. 6,000 of our acres are already farmland assessed, which not farmland preserved, but farmland assessed. So there's a lot of available property in town that could be ultimately developed. We're located at the crossroads of 2 abandoned railroad beds converted to trails, which would be the Sussex Branch Trail and the Polandskill Valley Trail. And we'll also, we have the Polandskill River going through our town. That we've even had help with the Walk Hill, the development that protection. That they've actually even put a bunch of trees along that river in the portion of our town to try to lessen the temperatures and improve fisheries in township. So we've even gone that angle and try to facilitate a lot of that things and getting the preservation projects going. We have 2,500 for a population, and we only have 900 housing units. A big element is we have no public water or sewer, so we're very sensitive to making sure our groundwater stays potable. Obviously, we have 4 scenic ridge lines, which I talked about before, that are very they constitute our view sheds and are really unique to the township of Lafayette. We have a strong equestrian presence along with standard livestock, and we've got newer livestock farms coming in with emu, bison, ostrich, and we've noticed that with the sustainability movement, we've seen a lot more of these farms come up and interest in people coming into the town trying to buy farms. So as I said before, things do change, and you got to adapt with that. We do also have a blue heron rookery, which was something that was actually preserved by New Jersey Natural Land Trusts along with the township that predated our open space plan. And that's a 262-acre preserve tract that was, again, done before the open space initiative. This is really, we had a mission statement when we first started our open space committee back in 2004. 3 of the original members are still serving. We have monthly meetings, but kind of our mission statement is to support outreach programs and advise residents of preservation opportunities. We've had 3 or 4 of them over the years and inviting all the farmers to see if they're interested. Because again, as I said, times change and circumstances change. We've facilitated a couple of state direct acquisitions. We facilitated farmland preservation projects with the Sussex County program. Members appear before the Land Use Board and the Township governing body to facilitate those open space preservation initiatives when they come before us. And we also have updated our ROSI at least twice over the last, I would say, 15 years to incorporate our new acquisitions. Just to give you a quick idea of the history of Lafayette open space preservation efforts, in 2004, the committee started the Open Space Committee. By the fall, we had several meetings with Sussex County and the Land Conservancy to explore options to preserve properties. And it became apparent that we should make a recommendation to the Township Committee that we needed to go ahead with that open space and recreation plan, which we did. And then subsequently, we moved ahead with actually filling out the planning incentive grant application, which provided with that 50-50 matching fund availability. In connection with that, in 2005, we had the public meeting that Barbara was talking about to obtain all the feedback from the local residents about what we wanted to identify as things we wanted to go after as far as goals for preservation. In the summer of 2005, we did decide another recommendation that we would move forward with a referendum question for November in the November election to establish that local open space trust and collect the local open space trust between 1 and 3 cents per hundred. That's the way our question went to the voters, between 1 and 3 cents. And that was in line with the statute that is referenced there, NJSA 40:12-15.7. We were successful in that referendum. It passed with 57% of the voters in favor and 43% against at that point. Then we drafted an ordinance that basically, again, in line with the statute, that established the Lafayette Open Space Recreation Farmland and Historic Trust Fund. We began collecting an open space tax in 2006. It was originally set by the Township Committee at 1.5 cents per hundred. We increased that in 2007 to 0.0175, and then reduced it beginning in 2009 to 1 cent, which Barbara mentioned before, that you have to keep at least half a cent. We've because our referendum was between 1 and 3 cents, we've maintained it at 0.01 cent. And the reason we've done that is Lafayette is small, and we only collect with the ratables. We're only collecting about, I think, $32,000 to $35,000 a year, and we always want to be in a position of actually moving forward and having funds available should a project come to fruition. You never know when that's going to happen. It could happen when an estate is looking to get rid of a farm or something along those lines, which in fact happened with our latest acquisition. So we like to keep money on hand to be in a position of doing that. When we originally passed the referendum, we did not use the development of lands criteria as being, because it's one of the ones that's allowed to be used per statute as what you can use your open space trust fund for. We were much more concerned in acquisition because at the time we really needed fields for the recreational activities in the town. With our first project that we actually came to fruition is something we went after for that. And we didn't want to have a position where maybe the township was going to include development of properties. We wanted to really go after land, which is why we actually excluded development as an original purpose for the open space trust, the local open space trust. What I mentioned before back in 2012 with the Ridgeline and Hillside Protection Overlay Zone Ordinance, it came out of an initiative when we had our first meeting with the residents who wanted to protect those ridges and try to not curtail development, but at least hide it amongst our ridge lines because they're very, very prominent. So it eventually went to a zoning ordinance that we have in place, and it's now part of our ordinance that basically protects those 4 ridge lines from, and it's not that you can't put development up there, but we have design standards in place to actually minimize the impact they have on the view shed. Our first acquisition was October 4th, 2012. We purchased the Lawler tract, which is off of Warbest Junction Road, with targeted objectives of the tract serving future active recreation needs. And this was a unique project because it was actually we worked very closely with state, who wanted the back portion of the property to add to the old Hyperhumus wildlife management area back there. So what we did was we avoided the cost of a subdivision. They took care of that for us. And the front 53 acres is now Lafayette's property. And the way we actually did that was kind of unique as well, because we actually convinced Sussex County Open Space Trust to make a contribution of $200,000 towards that. The total cost actually was $455,000. 200 came from Sussex County, and the local trust fund only had to be impacted by upwards of $27,838. So that was a very beneficial project to us because the county was involved, and it was another way to creatively go get some funding to make a project happen. Just some other quick dates as going along here. October 21st, 2013, Lafayette Village Historic District was passed, and we were listed on the State Register of Historic Places as of December 31st, 2013. And if anybody knows Lafayette, that would be the whole antique mill section along along Route 15 there. Second project we had was in March 25th, 2015. This was a purchase of the former Moose Castamore track off Lance Road. It is within that Statesville ridgeline that I was talking about. It preserves 73 acres, of which about 15 of it is farm fields, and the rest is just forested, beautiful forested, with iconic scenic views. And this became important also because Sussex County has the Sussex County Fairgrounds that is over in nearby Frankfort. And when you're looking up from those fairgrounds, you're now seeing trees that could otherwise have been a bunch of homes, which if you go down 565 closer to Frankfort, you will actually see that portion of the ridge was actually developed. So we wanted to basically try to protect that, which was ultimately we were successful in doing. The total cost of that project was $467,500. 50% was through our planning incentive grant funding, and we used the balance, a match of right out of the local open space trust fund at that point, which we had been able to get it healthier at that point over the number of years. So that project went through. 3 years later, we had a third municipal open space acquisition, which was a purchase of the former Morgan Farm tract off of Gorney Road, which actually is right adjacent to this Statesville Quarry Ridge Preserve, the first one we put through. The total cost of that was $300,000. We were able to get some county funding there of $100,000. The County Open Space Trust Fund contributed, and the state planning incentive grant funding contributed approximately $167,000. And we only had to, again, like our first project, only had to spend $32,000 out of our local open space trust. So we've been able to maximize our open space trust fund using other sources. Again, Barbara mentioned that in 2020, we did have the update to the local open space and recreation plan, and that was adopted by the land use board as an element of our master plan, just like our original plan was. That was actually probably overdue in getting done, but the cost of these things, it does cost money, and we use our professional, the Land Conservancy, to help us do that. So you have to be able to pay people to do that. So that's, something that you have. It was probably why it didn't get done and when it should have gotten done. It was a little bit more after 10 years, which Barbara said is what they really look for as far as the state, Green Acres program, looking for you to update it. This is just a quick flyer from our first open space public meeting. As Barbara said, you want to have outreach. You want to have at least 2 meetings when you're putting your plan together. And we made an effort to get the information out there. I think we had 30 or 40 people show up to that meeting. And basically, this was a summary of everyone's thoughts about what was important. I think Barbara mentioned that Knowlton was after, retaining their rural character. That's one of the main things Lafayette is about. We also were looking to preserve historic structures, barns, silos, and churches. Farmland preservation was ranked very high because of our agricultural history. Also, the residents did not want to see Route 15 widened in the township. And that at one point 20 years ago, that was a thought about trying to go around Lafayette and having Route 15 not go down to the center of the township. We were looking to get historic designation for the center, which again, I just mentioned we did that. Again, the development of the ridges, we were trying to curtail that. That has now successfully been done. We were looking to support the creation of that open space tax, again, completed. We were looking to create greenways and local trail systems to link neighborhoods and schools and recreation areas. And we've kind of done that as well. So these were the original goals that we were talking about in our first meeting. And you can see some of them have actually been completed. It takes time, but guess what? It does get done. I just threw this in here because this is, people are probably familiar if you go through the area. This was a project that was done with Art Frisbee back in July of 2017. We were talking about preserving, a silo. This is now like really ends up becoming almost a landmark if you're coming through Lafayette. Behind it is our old cemetery. We do have we don't have a historical commission, but we do have a 501c3 organization called Lafayette Preservation that holds and this was ghost stories that they did in one Halloween, but they maintain the cemetery. They were involved in this project to some degree, and they're also involved in the preservation of what is the Maybe House on Route 15, which was donated to the township years ago. It used to be Town Hall, but now it's actually being, it was completely restored by our Preservation Society. They're still working on it, but it's a beautiful building. Just to give you an idea in funding, again, just to recap, in 2005, we did have that ballot resolution approved to establish the local open space trust fund. We're still currently, as I mentioned, collecting 1 cent per 100 assessed value. To date, we have collected $644,067 in local open space tax and expended $420,000, almost $421,000. We've been awarded by the Green Acres Planning Incentive Grant over $1 million, $1.1 million. We haven't spent it all. Some of it got, we didn't have projects, so some of it got, redirected to other projects around the state. But that's what our award we have been able to achieve throughout the years. You can see what I mentioned before. We're only collecting about $33,000 a year. So that's what the thought process was initially about dealing just with acquisition. Because it takes years, and you want to have a project that's having available of $200,000, you could be 6 years into collecting that tax before you're in a position of matching it with other available funding. We also, as I mentioned, had collected now a total of $300,000 from Sussex County's Open Space Trust. They've contributed on those two different projects I talked about. And right now our balance is about $220,000. So we're in line, hopefully, to get back out there. And after we've done that update, to go out and seek some additional planning incentive grant funding, and also to potentially locate another project. The maps that Barbara was talking about, they're very, very helpful. In red here, you're going to see the more recently acquired tracts that we've been able to preserve. I always find these very helpful because you can actually see and try to plan and identify those tracts you might want to actually target and talk to the landowners about. Just to give you an idea of our township, we've got preserved 457 acres of municipal open space. It's the three recent projects we put together. It includes that blue Heron Rookery that I talked about earlier. The pond has been something that dates well before open space tract, but there's 8 acres down there. So that's what we have in our actual roster of municipal open spaces owned locally. In all, there's actually 1,662 acres of protected farmland preserved. That encompasses 17 farms, and we have a history of being one of the first farms in Sussex County to host one of those farms, dating back to 1990. The cost per acre has ranged between $1,700 to $15,500 per acre of the farmland that we've been able to preserve. Again, the cost, it acquires those development rights, and the total cost to do that, and this is not something we paid for, but the county paid for, is $6.6 million. So you see we have an expansive farmland preservation program in town, which is also supported by State Agricultural Development Committee. We have 356 acres of state land in 5 preserves. and 108 acres of federal wetlands reserve program. Overall, it's pretty decent. We've got 2,583 acres preserved in some sort of fashion, which is it's a substantial amount. But again, we have a lot of environmentally sensitive properties that we're trying to actually, protect. This just gives you a breakdown quickly of those 3 projects we had. I've gone over the funds, but it's just a better slide to show you how we actually came up with that funding to make those to bring those projects to fruition. Here's the second one. Again, it shows the location of it and how we funded it. And the third one, which was that expansion to that Ridgeline Preserve. Again, 3 different sources for funding, all in there. These are those maps. Again, they break it out whether the Land Conservancy is great with this because they give you 5 or 6 maps in your open space plan, and it basically shows you all the different ways it's preserved, whether it's farmland preserved, whether it's preserved through a federal program, but it identifies throughout the township where all your properties are. These were the real recent goals for our update. As I said, I had the other ones here, but some of them stay the same. Some of the other ones disappeared because we've actually been able to go ahead and move forward with realizing some of those goals we had previously put in our first plan. This was the referendum question we had in November of 2020. We did elect at this point, since we have 3 projects, and we added that development element that's allowed by statute, and we decided to put this as a referendum question. Here's an article that I actually did to the local paper supporting that, and it basically did go ahead and pass. And the reason for it was we wanted to continue with a possible trail project through Lawler. So we wanted to be able to use some of our local open space trust funds to go ahead and be in a position of actually bringing this project to fruition. I was working on it earlier with the Land Conservancy, some of their reps, because we're doing a application to Sussex County at this point. They have available $5,000 per municipality with a 50% match that we're looking to actually maximize and develop a trail over at Lawler, which again, you've got the existing state trails through there, and we're trying to tie and link up to those and provide some more trail opportunities over there. This is just a picture of that Moose Castamore acquisition. As you can see, we have about, I would say, a fifth of it is existing farm fields, but all over here is all a forested area. And you can see how beautiful it is up here and why we wanted to not allow for development. It's actually 11 acres and 62 of it is mature forested areas, and there's all types of wildlife in there. Just another quick element is we do have farm leases with some of our properties that have allowed us to actually enter into green acres approved leases. That it's a good thing to do because once you acquire these properties and maybe they're not farmed, you're going to get all kinds of invasive species, etc. So our farm lessee has an obligation to maintain this to some degree. Any of the farm lease income that goes back into the Lafayette Open Space Trust Fund, it supports all the other preservation programs. We have current leases on all 3 of our preserved properties. And there, if we had wanted to go ahead, like at Lawler, like we're doing now, some portion of that lease will be limited now to allow that to go in there. If we wanted to put a field over there, same thing. We have, Green Acres approved forms of leases that allows us to basically negotiate and take some of that property back if we have to, because the leases tend to be 3 to 5 years in length. And that's really all I have, as far as that goes. I mean, I hope we can have a question and answer if any of this, is something you wanted to discuss specifically. I'll turn it back to Barbara.
Great. So, perfect. All right. So with that, I'm going to ask Nikki to help us if there have been questions. If not, we have Nikki, I think, has some questions for us. So Nikki, did anyone have any questions in the chat?
Yes, we did. So first of all, thank you everyone for watching and for entering your questions. I'm going to start off the questions chronologically. And the first question we have is from Alex Ambrose. Do your municipals need an open space plan in order to qualify for the 50% grant?
Yes, a municipality has to have an open space and recreation plan and they have to be collecting a tax equal to 1/2 cent per $100 of assessed value.
All
I
right.
believe Sussex County is at a 1/2 cent. Is that correct? I think they are now.
I think so. It's really more of a municipal-based program. For the counties, they give more of a block grant. And I don't think Sussex County's applied for Green Acres funds in quite some time.
Okay. Yeah, as I said, we there's been discussion sometimes about us reducing ours, but our initiative or referendum was between 1 and 3 cents. So we can't we'd have to amend our referendum question to actually go to the lowest amount the planning incentive grant funding requires. So, but again, as I said, we've had arguments back and forth about it, but we're keeping it at 1% because we want to collect at least $35,000 a year to have available funds for acquisition.
So a good follow-up from that, if it's okay, Nikki, is that take Lafayette Township. They collect 1 cent, which is equal to 35, probably a little bit less, $1,000 a year. If they had a project that was worth $1 million and the landowner had agreed to sell it at below appraised value, let's say at 500,000, half of what it's appraised at, they could apply to Green Acres for that amount of money and receive it, because it's to be 50% of the value of the land, which means that they've leveraged their open space trust fund at 35,000 to a $500,000 grant, which could purchase a property. So it's a pretty significant thing. The investment to do the open space plan is really minor as compared to what you could access from the state. And Kevin also mentioned that you have to pay for it, which is correct. We do have a fee for the service. But if you're located in the New Jersey Highlands and you have a plan conformance grant, the Highlands Council will reimburse the cost of doing an open space and recreation plan or a plan update.
I think 50% of our plan initially, the original plan, was actually covered through a grant through the Environmental Commission.
Correct.
As well. So we actually save money there as well.
Mm-hmm. All right. Thanks, Nikki.
Moving on to our next question. We have a question from Julia Sommers. Are you being approached by solar companies interested in leasing farmland?
I believe that's a statutory question because Lafayette actually had a very large solar facility that was put up on Beaver Run Road, and that was farm assessed the land beforehand, and it was actually, but I'm not entirely sure how that works. That's really not really an open space question because it's directly by solar statutes in the state of New Jersey. I don't know how that works because I don't think it becomes any more. It's farmland assessed. The tax assessor will reevaluate that, and I don't think you get tax or farmland assessment any longer if you have those type of facilities there. I could be wrong, so it'd be something that has to be looked into. But I know it's governed by state statute. I know we have another one coming in under the old landfill that's right next to our MUA, and that's a separate statute because that deals with like putting solar panels on top of a capped landfill.
Anything to add, Barbara?
No, I think Kevin gave a great answer. Thank you.
Okay.
I don't believe Green Acres allows it on Green Acres property, though. I'm pretty sure that.
No, the Green Acres will only allow structures that support outdoor recreation. So it's a good question. So you can't put in solar panels on Green Acres funded property, and you can't put in a indoor community center. It has to be something. If you're going to build something, it has to support outdoor recreation, and we strongly recommend that you touch base with Green Acres before you construct anything.
And in fact, our Lawler project, if you recall, Barbara, we had 2 homes there that had to be demolished. They weren't in the best shape to begin with, but we were able to keep a barn over there under the potential that it could be used for equipment to be stored there, etc. So the barn is still there, but the homes are gone. The well was capped and all that kind of thing. That was all done.
Correct.
We have another question for Christine Dunbar. She asks, wondering if Lafayette has any recreational access points to the Pollenskill River?
Like as far as taking a kayak or something along that lines, or you just talking about? I mean, the trails do go. The existing state trails, are located in close proximity to that. So there are areas where you actually can walk along trails on the Poland Skills right there. I know there are people that actually fish there. And what I had mentioned before about we had somebody come in, Nathaniel Sajak had come in and had all kinds of volunteers, put thousands of trees to support and lower the temperature of the water. And I know fishermen are there. So I know that there is, there is definite access there for fishing anyway. I don't know if that answered the question.
We have an anonymous question in the Q&A. How has an open space program helped to address threats from developers?
So that's a good question, and one that we get a lot. The advantage of doing an open space plan and having an open space program is that you're proactive. You're sitting down and you're in a thoughtful way planning for where you want to protect land and why. It leads to a more proactive approach. You approach the landowners, you negotiate. In some instances, the landowner is willing and sometimes willing to sell, at a reasonable price, below price value. But it's a thoughtful, unpanicked way to go. If you don't have an open space plan and an open space program and you're reacting to a development coming in, at that point, you're dealing with a very expensive project. And one that may not fit into an overall open space scheme, and you're reacting to the threat of development. An open space plan, and if you have an open space program, you can certainly acquire the property that's under threat of development, but at that point, it may be a little expensive. So I think that having the plan and keeping it current and having a committee that's kind of shepherding that project will really help the municipality address some of these threats. Not all, but hopefully kind of get them off. I don't know, Kevin, if you want to add anything to that.
Well, that's what I was mentioning, and when I was talking about that Moose Castamer property up on the ridge. What happened was that the land use board was approached with a concept subdivision by the property owner, and he hadn't gotten real far into how much it would cost to make that development with roads, et cetera. But it was going to be an expensive project because it was steep roads, et cetera, that would have to go in there to support that. So that was an example where we offered them the option of preserving instead, and the family that's involved has been a longtime Sussex County family, and they elected to go ahead and go the preservation route, and that subdivision went away. It was important because of the view shed. So that was, we made the decision at that point to give up the potential ratables and decide to go ahead and just preserve it instead, and they went along with it. And that was identified in our plan. So, we had the plan, it was identified in the plan. That concept came in a couple years after to the land use board, and we had the funding ready to go and to explore preserving it, and it worked.
All right. Well, that looks like that's all the time we have for today. Thank you guys for asking some very intriguing questions. And thank you to Kevin and Barbara for presenting today. So I think with that, our session has ended. It might be time for session 2. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.